Spooked to death.
Oh, Andrew Spencer is such a brilliant boy. I'm gonna pin this on the fridge.
Whoa! Taking place directly after the events of the first Ecstatica, Ecstatica 2 starts off by being a game that Andrew Spencer of
Andrew Spencer Studios
was not interested in making. Following the success and critical acclaim of the first game, Andrew Spencer of Andrew Spencer Studios wanted to use his engine to create an entirely new game. Urban Decay was his passion project, his baby. According to this article on the wiki, the game had several impressive tech demos, and it would have been the first mature game for adult gamers with swearing and proper violence. Unfortunately, following the success of the first Ecstatica, Andrew Spencer of Andrew Spencer Studios found himself surrounded by the most loathsome of God's creatures, normal video game publishers. Signosis, known for publishing beloved classics Rascal and Denny's Animal Adventure, got really mad and probably started calling Mr. Spencer some very rude names when they discovered he was making a game that wasn't entirely derivative of the first, using the flawed logic of why create something new when you can just make the successful thing over and over again until you run it into the fucking ground. They convinced a broken and apathetic Andrew Spencer of Andrew Spencer Studios to suspend work on his passion project and make another Ecstatica. This new Ecstatica would be very stinky. The focus on building atmosphere and fleeing from monsters was gutted and replaced by hacking and slashing through hordes of uninteresting, infinitely respawning mokes. The hero's rear would be nerfed and his bulge nullified so that the normies don't get too uncomfortable. This would be the key factor in Ecstatica 2's critical failure, which resulted in the closing of Andrew Spencer Studios, and the work on Urban Decay going to complete waste. All that remains of Urban Decay are a few blurry screenshots of balloon people in action poses and this footage of what we can only assume is a boss character. Poor Mr. Spencer. They don't understand you like I do. They are without compassion or ambition. They will tear you down and eat you alive for trying to do something different.
Shh, no need for words. I'm here. Signosis is gone. In fact, they no longer exist.
The game opens with Ecstatica once again being captured by demons and our boy getting knocked on the noodle. Only to wake up in a stockade.
Hear me. Take great care if you value your life.
Once you are thrust into gameplay, the first thing immediately obvious is that the controls are completely different from the first game and there is no way to check or rebind them in-game. But they're pretty easy to figure out. Arrow keys to move, shift to jump, control plus arrow keys is to perform various types of attacks, alt plus arrow keys is to dodge in the specified direction, and of course, Windows plus arrow keys to end the process and potentially reveal your darkest secrets to anyone who may be watching. Right off the bat, the game throws large groups of monsters at you, and you would think that with all the new control options, the combat would be pretty interesting, right? Well, no. The most viable tactic is to simply hold Control left to repeatedly perform a lunge attack. This attack has the longest reach and automatically positions the player to be facing the nearest enemy. You're gonna be holding this for a majority of the game. Because this game put an emphasis on combat, there is very little downtime, and the monsters are constantly spawning off screen. It gets terribly dull, really fast. The only thing worse than the combat is probably the rest of the game. If you like running around in circles and hitting switches without knowing what they do, then boy oh boy, is this the game for you. This game is quite aggravating without a guide. Eventually you find Ecstatica, I think it's supposed to be her, and she reveals the story behind this gray and brown boring mess.
The evil Archmage and his infernal army have broken and scattered the sacred Elder Sign. On Midsummer's Night, they will reform the sign, and with unearthly incantation, summon the Lord of Darkness. You must defeat the Archmage and his evil horde before it's too late.
Oh, so an evil mage is doing a thing so that a video game can happen. Got it. Ah, wait. What's wrong with summoning the Lord of Darkness? I used to be roommates with the Lord of Darkness way back during my technical training at Kiesler. He was a pretty swell guy. Ecstatica needs to keep our nose out of other people's business and stop being so judgmental. The mage probably just wants to chill with the Lord of Darkness, and I don't really blame him. But no, got to murder him. It is a murder simulator after all. Alright, back to running around and being bored. Oh, Whoops, I just discovered that holding Control and Alt gives you access to even more attacks. This spin attack makes me completely untouchable. I guess I lied about holding Control for the entire game. It's Control, Alt, and down now. I can't really stress this enough. The first Ecstatica was short and sweet. There was usually something interesting on screen at any given moment. Ecstatica 2 is long and drawn out with a constant stream of monsters that never feel like any sort of threat. Even if combat was any good, you would still be running back and forth looking for the one obtuse passage you still need to take in this giant maze of disorienting camera angles. Wait, why are some of these steps brown? Are they supposed to be made of a different material, or are they caked in dirt? These brown steps are the most interesting thing in the entire game. Oh, I finally found where I'm supposed to go. There's a doorway behind this support beam. I didn't notice because me dumb. Oh, but I did notice that the ovaloid representing the player character's hair is constantly Z-fighting with his forehead. His eyes are too, now that I've stopped to look at them. His head is made of more spherules than it was in the first game, but now it is deeply unpleasant to look at. Okay, so we've got 3 switches and they aren't working. You need to find and activate 3 other switches in order to activate these 3 switches. You need to do this in order to get the ice key, so you can get the grape key, so you can hit a switch that opens a door in a completely different room where you find a magic sword. You use this sword to stab the front door of the castle to get in.
Salutations. Wisdom has led you well.
Naturally, there isn't anything in the game that even hints at using the sword like this. At this point, my sanity began to wear thin. I am actually mad at this electronic entertainment computer program. There is a reason why the game was designed like this. One of the main complaints players had about the first Ecstatica was its short length. So the sequel would address this issue by billing itself as being a long and massive adventure. It's not actually that much longer. If you know what to do, it's around 3 hours long. If you know what to do. Play through it blind and you'll find yourself doing a lap around the entire world every time you hit a switch just to try to find what it did. And this bit with the sword? It's absolutely brilliant! Keep players from beating the game too quickly by having them run around not knowing what to do until they eventually try to hit the big door that looks like it needs to be opened with a switch with this specific sword. That'll probably keep most players from progressing too far for at least a few weeks without outside information. Wow, what a massively long game. An epic adventure if there ever was one. Now this is brilliant game design. I'm glad I spent money on Ecstatica 2. I'm going to recommend it to all of my friends. Oh, this guy's pretty cool. He throws his chalice at you. I'm going to pretend that this is the final boss. Look, this is the very real end of the game. There can't possibly be several more hours of the worst padding imaginable after this. Look, here's the ending.
You have thwarted the Archmage's diabolical scheme and restored harmony and balance to the universe. The evil is gone.
I did it! Overall, I would say Ecstatica 2 isn't very good. It isn't very good, and it came out in 1997, which happens to be the same year Zapitalism came out. Ecstatica 2 was doomed. In less than an hour in the first Ecstatica, you go from being chased by a werewolf to dodging snakes as a squirrel, and then to having a charismatic demon try to make a deal with you while his skeleton butler brings you wine.
Oh, that's adorable.
Ecstatica 2 has none of that. It's about running around, not knowing if you're actually making any progress and wishing you were dead. It's longer, but not better by any stretch of the imagination. You can't even play as a squirrel. That's absolutely unforgivable.